Here is the video explanation for the solutions you should have gotten for Unit 3 Personal Check Part 2. Again, this is the free response. This question says to assume that the following variables have been properly declared and initialized. So we're going to have a Boolean variable named RSVP. Remember, Boolean variables can only have two possible values, either true or false. There's going to be an integer variable named selection, where 1 represents the selection of beef, 2 represents chicken, 3 represents pasta, and all other values will represent fish. There's going to be a string variable named option 1, which is going to probably store the person's first choice, and a string variable named option 2, which is probably going to be the client's backup plan for what option they would pick. So the first part of this question says, to write a code segment that prints out attending if RSVP is true and prints out not attending otherwise. So this question is about using simple logic and branching. So we want an if statement and an else. So the solution for this is going to look like if RSVP. Now this looks a little weird because usually inside of here we have some kind of comparison operator, like a relational operator, like a greater than or less than. But remember, RSVP is a Boolean variable. So if that is true, we're going to print out attending, system.out.println attending. And the else to this, the only other option for RSVP, since it's a Boolean, is false. So the else to that would be to print out that we're not attending. Part B of this problem says, write a code segment that prints the food item associated with selection. For example, if selection is 3, the code should print out pasta. If it's 1, it should print out beef. If it's 2, it should print out chicken. And then if you have any other choice, you should print out fish. So write the code segment below. Your code segment should meet all the specifications to conform to the example. So here's what the solution for this should look like. Remember, you could use a switch operator for this. That probably is the most logical thing to do here. But since a switch operator is not a required element of the AP curriculum, they're going to use an if, else structure. If the selection equals 1, then we're going to print out that the selection was beef. So 1 corresponds to beef. Else if the selection equals 2, we're going to print out that it was chicken. Else if selection equals 3, we're going to system.out.println pasta. And then the else to this, which would include any other possible selection, is going to print out that it was fish. Now remember, one thing to be careful of, here, here, and here. Make sure you're using the double equal sign. You're trying to compare if selection is equal to 1. You do not want to use a single equal sign, which would actually make the selection 1. You want to check it, so that's double equal sign. Part C to this problem says, write a code segment that will store a dinner selection in option 1 based on the values of RSVP and selection. The intended behavior of the code segment is described below. If RSVP is true, the code segment should store in option 1 a string indicating the person's attendance and their food choice. For example, if RSVP is true and selection is 1, the following string should be stored in option 1. Thanks for attending. You will be served beef. If RSVP is false, the following string should be stored in option 1 regardless of the value of selection. Sorry, you can't make it. Write the code segment below. Your code segment should meet all the specifications and conform to the example. So here's what the solution to that should look like. The first thing that we have to check out is see if RSVP is true. So we're going to start with an if statement. If RSVP, again, this is a Boolean, so if that's true, we're going to do what's inside the if. Option 1 needs to be the phrase, thanks for attending, you will be served, and then we have to base what we're going to do next off of the selection. So we've started a string, option 1, with these words, thanks for attending, you will be served, and a space. Now, if the selection is equal to 1, we're going to concatenate, add on to option 1 the word beef. If the selection was 2, we're going to add on the word chicken. If the selection was 3, we're going to add on the word pasta. Else, we're going to add on the word fish. So basically going through our different selection options, we're going to concatenate an extra word onto the end of this already started sentence for option 1. Now, if the RSVP Boolean variable was false, we need an else for this if. So this else that you're seeing down here goes with this if up here, and you would want option 1 to say, sorry, you can't make it. At this point, we don't care what the selection was because they're not attending anyways. So this problem really is about nested if statements. These if and else structures are inside of the first if, and this else goes with that if. So be very careful with your usage of braces here to make sure that this if statement starts and closes its braces before this else statement starts. The last part to this question, part D, says to write a code segment that will print true if the strings option 1 and option true contain the same values and will print false otherwise. Write the code segment below. So this is a problem about checking to see if two strings share the same information inside of them. Now, remember, since strings are not intrinsic types, you can't just do a double equal sign here. That's not going to work. That would actually check to see if the memory locations are the same location, but it won't check to see if the characters that are actually being stored are the same. So the proper way to do this is to make use of the string method called equals. So here's what your solution should look like. This is probably the easiest way to do it. System.out.println option 1 dot equals option 2. Again, you cannot use a double equal sign comparison here because it's not an intrinsic type. So you're checking to see if the string option 1 dot equals, and the parameter that we're sending in here is option 2. Now, there's another way to do it. This is going to print out the result of whatever is returned back from this. So that would either be a true or a false. But you could also do it like this. If option 1 dot equals option 2, system.out.println true, and this should be inside of a quote, and else system.out.println false. This brings up another good point to the coding of these free response questions. Very oftentimes it's possible to code these in a couple of different ways, and I did want to point out that both of these options would receive full credit. So you don't have to do it one way or the other, whichever way you think of first.